"Hey Zara, wanna dance with us?" Chelsea Bradford's invitation echoed throughout the Metropolitan Ballet Academy, but the mocking tone made it clear that it was anything but a genuine invitation. Zara Williams was only 17 when she found herself in the center of that circle of elegant ballerinas, her imported point shoes contrasting sharply with her bare feet. While her mother, Grace, cleaned the mirrors in the main studio, Zara waited for the day to end, sitting in the corner as she always did. The prestigious academy was a world apart. Daughters of executives, senators, and surgeons glided across the waxed floor as if they had been born with wings on their feet. Zara, with her toned muscles and dark skin, was just the invisible daughter of the cleaning lady, until Chelsea decided to make her the afternoon's entertainment. "Come on, don't be shy," insisted Harper, the unofficial leader of the group. At 18, she had already won 3 first places in state competitions. "I bet you know all the steps from watching so much." The other girls laughed, their perfect buns bouncing as they formed a semicircle around Zara. It was Thursday, 5:30 p.m., and Mrs. Montgomery had left for a meeting, leaving the students to rehearse on their own. Grace, on the other side of the studio, pretended not to hear as she scrubbed the floor with extra force. She knew that tone well. She had grown up hearing variations of it her entire life. "How about we try that sequence from Swan Lake we were practicing?" Chelsea suggested, her blue eyes sparkling mischievously. "You know, the really hard part with the 32 fouettes." Zara stood still for a moment, her dark eyes scanning each face around her. There was something in that look, a calmness that didn't belong to a 17-year-old girl about to be publicly humiliated. "Okay," she replied simply, rising from her chair. What none of these privileged girls could have imagined was that Zara carried a secret that would turn that afternoon of planned humiliation into something none of them would ever forget. As her small hands adjusted her simple t-shirt, Zara took a deep breath. Her bare feet touched the cold studio floor, and something changed in the air. The mocking laughter began to subside as they saw the girl's upright posture, the way she positioned her arms, as if that sturdy body had found a language that transcended any conventional aesthetic standard. Grace stopped cleaning, her eyes widening. She knew that posture. She had seen it before, in secret, during the nights when she thought no one was watching. "But you're barefoot," Harper pointed out dismissively. "How are you going to do point without point shoes? You'll hurt your feet on the hard floor." Zara looked down at her bare feet, then at the other girl's expensive ballet shoes. "I learned that real ballet doesn't come from equipment," she said calmly. "It comes from where the music plays inside you." Chelsea laughed loudly. "How poetic. But in the real world, sweetheart, ballet requires proper technique and proper equipment. It's not folk dancing from your background." The racist comment hung in the air like poison. Several girls exchanged uncomfortable glances, but none spoke. The social hierarchy at the academy was strict. Chelsea Bradford, daughter of the state attorney general, was not to be questioned. "My background," Zara repeated softly, "taught me that strength comes from within, not from outside." If you're enjoying this story of courage and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what's about to happen is going to rewrite everything these privileged girls thought they knew about talent, grace, and the true meaning of dance. The surprise on the girls' faces was almost comical. Harper, accustomed to being obeyed without question, blinked a few times before processing that Zara had actually accepted the challenge. "Really?" Chelsea laughed, but there was a nervous note in her voice. "You're really going to try 32 fouettes? Girl, that takes years to master. I can only do 18 in a row." The other girls gathered closer to get a better view of what promised to be an embarrassing spectacle. Some had already pulled out their cell phones, clearly planning to record the humiliation to share later on social media. Zara walked to the center of the studio with disconcerting calm. Meanwhile, out of the corner of her eye, Grace watched the scene unfold. She knew that posture well, the same calm Zara displayed when the kids at school teased her mother for being just a cleaning lady, or when mean comments about her weight echoed through the hallways. "Mom, you have to see this," one of the girls whispered to another, turning on her cell phone camera. "The cleaning lady's daughter thinks she can dance ballet." Grace felt her fist tighten around the cleaning cloth, but she forced herself to keep working. She had taught Zara from an early age, never let them see you break. When they underestimate you, that's when you show them who you really are. Harper crossed her arms, striking the pose of a stern judge. "Let's be fair, girls. If she can do at least 8 fouettes without falling, well, we'll be impressed." The condescension in her voice was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "And if she doesn't?" Chelsea asked, already savoring the anticipated victory. "Then she promises never to pretend she belongs in our world again," Harper replied, her eyes flashing with calculated cruelty. "No more sitting there watching our rehearsals like you're one of us." The words cut through the air like sharp blades. It was more than a bet, it was a sentence of social exclusion, an attempt to completely erase Zara's presence from the space she had quietly frequented for years. Zara stood motionless in the center of the studio, absorbing every poisonous word. What these girls didn't know was that during all those years watching from the sidelines, she hadn't just been dreaming. In the early hours of the morning, when the studio was empty and Grace was doing the heavy cleaning, Zara practiced. Grace had grown up in Haiti, where she had learned folk dancing before life brought her to the United States in search of better opportunities. On nights when they finished late at the studio, mother and daughter took advantage of the empty space. Grace taught Zara not only the steps she had observed during the day's lessons, but also the inner strength that came from her roots, the deep connection between music and soul that transcended any formal technique. "When you dance," Grace always said, "you're not trying to impress anyone. You're talking to something bigger than all of us." Harper clapped her hands impatiently. "Let's get on with it. I have tennis in an hour and I don't want to be late because of this situation." Zara took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and connected with something those privileged girls could never buy with their parents' money: pure authenticity. When she opened her eyes again, there was something different in her gaze. An intensity that made even Grace stop cleaning altogether. What none of these young ballerinas could have imagined was that they were about to witness not just a dance, but a demonstration that true talent is not born in expensive classes or equipped studios. It is born from the need to express a soul that refuses to be silenced, even when the whole world tries to stifle its voice. Zara's bare feet found the cold floor with a precision that defied logic. Without point shoes, each movement required pure muscle strength, perfect balance, and a connection to the floor that most dancers would never develop. The silence in the studio was almost suffocating. Zara closed her eyes and for a moment was transported back to those special mornings she shared with Grace. It was in those intimate moments, when only mother and daughter occupied the sacred space of dance, that the real magic happened. Grace had grown up in Port-au-Prince, where her grandmother, Celeste, had been a renowned Haitian folk dancer. Before economic hardship forced the family to immigrate to the United States, Grace had absorbed not only the traditional movements, but also the philosophy behind them. "Dance doesn't come from the muscles, Zara. It comes from the heart and flows to the feet." For 3 years, on nights when they finished cleaning late, Grace had turned the main studio into a private school for Zara. She taught not only the classical ballet she observed during the day, but a unique fusion that combined European technique with the expressive Caribbean force that ran through her veins. "Look, Zara," Grace whispered during those secret lessons, "these girls dance perfectly, but without soul. You will dance imperfectly, but with so much heart that no one will be able to look away." Harper drummed her fingers impatiently, her Apple Watch showing that they had already lost 15 minutes of this entertainment. "Can we get started, or do you need more time to come up with an excuse?" Chelsea laughed, adjusting the camera angle. "It'll be even funnier when she tries and fails miserably. My mom always says everyone has to know their place in society." What none of the girls knew was that Zara had spent the last 6 months preparing specifically for this moment. Not because she had foreseen this particular humiliation, but because Grace had noticed the cruel looks and whispered comments that had been intensifying every day. "One day," Grace had said months ago, "they're going to try to break you. And when that day comes, you'll be ready to show them who you really are." Grace had used her limited savings to buy used ballet shoes from a retired ballerina. But more importantly, she had taught Zara how to transform every emotion, anger, sadness, hope, into pure physical expression, even without props. Across the studio, Grace did something she had never done during work hours: she stopped cleaning. She knew what was about to happen, and she needed to witness every second of it. Zara took a deep breath and assumed 5th position, her bare feet finding perfect balance on the cold floor. The girls continued to laugh, but Grace noticed something they missed: the subtle change in Zara's posture, the way her shoulders aligned as if an invisible string was pulling her toward the ceiling. 32 fouettes, Zara said softly, more to herself. "Let's see what I'm capable of." Harper rolled her eyes. "Honey, I've had 3 years of private lessons with the best teacher in the state, and I still struggle to do 16. Do you really think?" The words died on her lips as Zara executed her first fouette. It wasn't perfect by classical technical standards, but there was something mesmerizing about the way she controlled the movement, as if each turn carried a story, an emotion that transcended pure technique. Her arms didn't move with the ethereal delicacy of traditional ballerinas, but with an expressive strength that held the eye. Even more impressive, her bare feet showed a connection to the floor, a balance that defied all the conventional rules of ballet. Second fouette. Third. Fourth. Chelsea's mocking smile began to falter. On her phone screen, she could see that something extraordinary was happening, but her mind refused to fully process it. Grace felt tears well up in her eyes. She recognized every movement, the secret lessons, the whispered advice, the fusion of techniques they had created together. But there was something more there, something Zara had developed on her own, a connection to the music that seemed to come from a place deeper than any formal training. 10th fouette. 11th. 12th. The laughter stopped completely. Harper lowered her arm slowly, the arrogant smile turning into an expression of growing confusion. It had taken her 2 years to be able to do 12 consecutive fouettes with proper technique. Zara continued spinning, and with each movement it became clearer that this was not luck or chance. It was the result of preparation, dedication, and a natural talent that had been carefully cultivated away from prying eyes. When Zara performed her 20th fouette, something changed in the air of the studio. Even the most resistant girls began to realize that they were witnessing something special. It wasn't just technique. It was pure art born from a young soul that needed to express itself despite all the barriers imposed by the world. Grace finally understood that all those months of preparation had not been about teaching Zara to dance. They had been about teaching a 17-year-old girl that she had the right to occupy any space, to dream any dream, and to never let anyone define her limits based on prejudice and privilege. 25th fouette. 26th. 27th. And it was when Zara passed the 30 fouettes mark that it became clear to everyone present that this was not just a demonstration of technical skill. It was a silent but powerful statement that true talent knows no social, economic, or ethnic barriers, and that sometimes the greatest strength is born in the very places where the world expects to find only weakness. 32 fouettes. 33. 34. Zara continued spinning with a precision that defied all logic. Harper felt her legs weaken and had to lean on the bar to keep from falling. In her 18 years of life, raised in the privileged world of elite ballet, she had never witnessed anything like it. "That's not possible," Chelsea whispered, her voice trembling as she continued filming. But now for completely different reasons. What had started as documentation of humiliation had turned into a record of something extraordinary. Grace could no longer hold back her tears. Every movement Zara made was a validation of all the sacrifices, the morning's cleaning offices to pay for used ballet shoes, the sleepless nights teaching techniques she had learned herself by watching for years, the entire weekends practicing in silence so as not to disturb the neighbors in the small apartment. 40th fouette. 41st. 42nd. One of the youngest girls in the group began to cry silently, not out of mockery, but out of something she couldn't yet name. It was like watching a miracle happen before her eyes. A complete redefinition of everything they believed about talent, elegance, and what it really meant to be a ballerina. "My God," whispered a voice from behind the group. Mrs. Montgomery had returned from her meeting just as Zara passed the 40 mark. She stopped at the door, her briefcase falling to the floor with a thud, unable to process what her trained eyes were seeing. How does a 17-year-old girl do 45 consecutive fouettes barefoot? Montgomery whispered to herself, recognizing not only the impressive technique, but something deeper, a connection to the music that transcended any formal training she knew. Zara finally stopped at the 45th fouette, not because she was exhausted, but because she felt she had proven her point. Her bare feet found the floor with a final grace that echoed through the studio like a definitive exclamation point. The silence that followed was deafening. Harper was the first to break it, her hands shaking visibly. Where did you learn to do that? I've been taking classes for 8 years with the best teachers in the state, and I've never made it past 16 fouettes. 45 fouettes, repeated one of the other girls, as if she needed to say it out loud to believe it. I've never seen anyone do 45 fouettes in a row, not even in the professional videos of the American Ballet Theater. Chelsea was still holding the phone, but her hands were shaking so much that the image was completely blurred. The video she had planned to use to humiliate Zara on social media was now evidence of something that would change everything, not just for Zara, but for all of them. Zara, Mrs. Montgomery's voice cut through the silence, laden with a reverence she had never directed at a 17-year-old. We need to talk. Now. What you just did is not normal. It's exceptional. Grace quickly dried her eyes and approached her daughter, her arms wrapping around the small shoulders that had just carried the weight of years of prejudice and underestimation. I'm proud of you, she whispered in Haitian Creole, her voice breaking. Grandma Celeste would be so proud. Harper looked around as if waiting for someone to explain how her reality had been completely turned upside down in a matter of minutes. Her carefully constructed world of privilege and superiority had crumbled before a girl they considered inferior. I need to sit down, one of the other girls murmured, sliding down the wall to the floor. Did that really happen? Did she really do 45 perfect fouettes barefoot? It wasn't just the fouettes, Mrs. Montgomery said, approaching slowly. It was the expression, the musical connection, the stage presence. Zara, how many years have you been studying ballet formally? Formally, Zara smiled, her eyes meeting Grace's. I've never studied formally, Mrs. Montgomery. But my mother has been teaching me for 3 years. She learned from my great-grandmother, who was a principal dancer at the National Theatre of Haiti. The impact of this revelation was like a bomb in the studio. All those girls with their expensive $300 an hour lessons and teachers with European credentials had been outdone by a young woman who learned to dance in the early hours of the morning with a cleaning lady who had never set foot in a formal ballet school. Your phone, Zara said calmly, holding out her hand to Chelsea. I'd like to see the video you recorded. Chelsea hesitated for a moment, but handed over the device with trembling fingers. Zara watched a few seconds of the recording, observing her own performance with critical, mature eyes. You can post that video anywhere you want, she said, returning the phone. I'm sure a lot of people would like to see what happens when we judge someone by their appearance instead of giving talent a real chance. Harper finally found her voice, but now she sounded small and vulnerable. I'm so sorry, Zara. I'm really sorry. We didn't know you were, that you had this gift. That I was what? Zara asked gently, but with a firmness that made Harper swallow her words. Different from you? That's exactly what I am. And that's exactly why I can do things you never imagined possible. Ms. Montgomery watched the interaction with growing fascination. Zara, would you be interested in formal lessons? Because after what I just witnessed, I can guarantee that any academy in the country would love to have you as a student. Grace intervened gently. Teacher, we can't afford the tuition here. I work as a cleaning lady because I need to support my daughter, not because I chose to. Full scholarship, Montgomery replied without hesitation. Private lessons, participation in competitions, everything. A dancer with that kind of natural talent cannot be wasted for financial reasons. The sound of applause began softly, coming from Harper herself. She clapped slowly, tears streaming down her face. In all my years of dancing, she said, I have never witnessed such an impressive display of pure talent. Zara, you are amazing. One by one, the other girls began to clap as well. It wasn't the condescending clapping Zara knew so well, but a genuine acknowledgement from someone who had completely redefined their expectations of what was possible in the world of dance. Chelsea looked at her phone, then at Zara. Can I post this video? But not as a joke. As inspiration. I think the world needs to see this. Zara nodded, a small smile touching her lips. You can post it, but make sure you use a caption that tells the truth. That real talent has no color, no social class, and definitely can't be bought with expensive tuition fees. 3 months later, Chelsea's video went viral with over 20 million views. The title she chose, 17-year-old Girl Proves Real Talent Has No Color or Shoes, made Zara Williams the youngest and most talked about ballerina in the country. The Metropolitan Ballet Academy was never the same again. Not only did Ms. Montgomery fulfill her promise of a full scholarship for Zara, she completely overhauled the admissions program. After witnessing what Zara did, she explained in a national interview, I realized that our academy was wasting extraordinary talent because of prejudices disguised as aesthetic standards. Harper Thornfield, who had previously considered herself the undisputed star of the academy, now shared the main stage with Zara in the most important performances. Zara taught me that being the best doesn't mean being perfect according to old standards, Harper confessed on her personal blog. It means being authentic and connected to something bigger than technique. A year later, Zara received an invitation to participate in the International Young Dancers Gala in Paris. She would be the official representative of the United States, an honor reserved for the country's most promising talents. The girl who was once invited to dance as a joke would now represent her country on the most prestigious stage in the world of classical dance. Zara Williams' story proved that true talent knows no color, social class, or aesthetic standards imposed by society. More importantly, it showed that when we face prejudice with dignity, authenticity, and preparation, we don't just win. We transform the world around us, creating spaces where others like us can dream bigger than they ever thought possible. If this story of courage and transformation has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that true power lies in never letting others define our limits, and that sometimes the greatest revolution begins with a single dance step taken by someone the world completely underestimated.